In this video, I show you a powerful metaphysical view of reality that can reshape the way you look at everything around you. The Hindu Trinity consists of three deities, which are the three most important gods in Hinduism: Brahma, god of creation; Vishnu, god of preservation; and Shiva, lord of destruction. After living in South Asia for several years, I began to see the profound wisdom, truth, and utility in conceptualizing nature in this way. I think it helps those of us who've been educated into a Western mind to conceive of this worldview by avoiding thinking of the Hindu gods in the same way that we would typically conceive of the Christian God. That is to say, by avoiding conceiving of the gods as actual figures living up in the clouds, but rather by imagining these three Hindu deities as abstracted deifications or personifications of the three fundamental required forces of nature. And by forces of nature, I'm not speaking about forces in the same sense as in the laws of physics, but rather I'm thinking of forces as patterned characteristics inherent in being itself, or fundamental patterns in our lived experience of this reality. Not only are these three patterns inherent in our experience, but they are necessary for our very existence. This will become clear by the end of the video, so be sure to stick around. Take a look around you. Do you notice that every single thing in your day-to-day life came into being at some point? That it was created or came into existence by some process? Every person, every dog and cat, every tree and flower, spiders, ants, every car, table, every house. It wasn't here and then it was. It didn't exist and then it did. Indeed, things are continually coming into existence and being fashioned every single moment. Babies are constantly being born. Seeds are constantly germinating. New products are being developed every day. New songs are written. New innovations and technologies created. Now, it may be difficult for us to categorize this as a law of physics, but surely this is an extremely important and fundamental pattern of our own experience of reality in the domain of living organisms. We could call this the generative force. Brahma, god of creation, represents this generative force of nature, and everywhere we look, we see constant generation of life and the byproducts of life. Now, on the other extreme, again, take a look around you. Do you notice that everything that exists is also in a constant state of degradation? The moment it comes into existence, it begins to decay. Every car, every table, every house, every cathedral, building, city, empire, dog, cat, spider, ant, tree, and human being to ever come into being will eventually grow too old and dissolve back into the nothingness from which it sprang forth out of. You could almost view this as the second law of thermodynamics, as entropy. Anything which comes into being is slowly winding its way back into non-being through the destructive, entropic, decomposing force of nature. Death and breakdown await all that come into being. Everything that appears to exist will be swallowed up at some point by the demon of change, as some Buddhists would say. For the cause of death is birth, and the cause of destruction is creation. This destructive force of nature is represented by Lord Shiva, who not only represents destruction, but more importantly, represents the creative or innovative aspect inherent in destruction. As Dan Carlin so eloquently phrased it, sometimes you have a very old forest full of dead and dying trees, and the trees have grown so tall that they choke out the sunlight beneath them, and the death of the plants has led to all of the insects and animals to leave in search of greener pastures elsewhere. The forest has lost all of its vitality. Then a great fire comes along and it burns this old decaying forest to the ground, and it creates the fertile conditions for new life to sprout. Shiva, to borrow a phrase from Steve Jobs, clears out the old to make way for the new. Lord Shiva represents a necessary component of being. In order for the creative generation to take place, sometimes the old creations become too stiff, too rigid, too stale, too overbearing, and they squash out the new growth. We see this in economics all the time with the formation of monopolies. If nothing ever died, the world would quickly become overrun and there would be no more room for anything new to come into existence. Continual generation, therefore, requires continual destruction to sustain itself. Now, finally, I must point out that while things are continually coming into existence and continually decomposing and being destroyed, in order for anything to exist at all, The destruction must not happen too quickly, for if something is destroyed just as quickly as it comes into existence, then there could be no experienced reality anyways. In between the creation and destruction, then, there is a third force of nature, a third component of being, or existence. This component acts as a force of friction upon the destructive component of reality, thus slowing it down to prevent instantaneous destruction, in which being could not be. This third necessary component of reality is represented by Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu is the glue that holds creation together, that sustains it long enough to enable reality to manifest, to dance its dance for a time, prior to its inevitable destruction. Human beings can sometimes channel these forces in various ways. You might say that they act as partial incarnations of or conduits for these divine principles of reality. We all know individuals who act as the glue of their family, friend circle, or business. That one aunt or uncle or grandparent or cousin who's constantly organizing reunions and events and sending everyone cards and keeping in touch with everyone and mediating disagreements and fights. These individuals tie everyone together, and their preservative presence isn't truly appreciated until they are gone, as things fall apart if nobody can step into their shoes. Such an individual is channeling the energy of Vishnu. We also know individuals who are constantly creating, continually writing, painting, starting new businesses, or working on new projects. This person is being animated by the energy of Brahma. And then there's the rebel, the individual who seems to destroy or cause havoc wherever they go. They are channeling the divine principle of Shiva, and there's often a chaotic creativity emanating from these individuals as well. The cracks of chaos which they cause from time to time enable bright new saplings to appear. Every now and again, humanity sees what might be considered as a pure incarnation of one of these divine principles. That is, an individual who seems to be so totally animated by one or other of these three divine forces. We might consider enlightened and selfless figures such as Buddha, Krishna, Prophet Muhammad, Rumi, Jesus, Saint Francis, Guru Nanak, or Lao Tzu, just to name but a small few, who strove to bring humanity together, regardless of our barriers, and to spread radiant love, peace, unity, and connection, to be the most pure incarnations of the energetic component of being, known as preservation, and given the name Vishnu. For truly they are incarnating the divine principle of Vishnu. The aunt who keeps the family together could be thought of as partially channeling that preservative force. Revolutionaries who tear down old stale institutions which have been decaying and stifling growth and change for generations in order to pave the way for something new to germinate in the ruins of the old ways could be thought of as more pure incarnations of the creative destructive principle known as Lord Shiva. For as the saying goes, to make an omelet you must break a few eggs. And finally, the greatest, most talented composers and inventors and scientists such as Beethoven, Leonardo da Vinci, or Sir Isaac Newton could be thought of as more pure incarnations of the generative energy of Brahma. Their very existence seems to be animated by Lord Brahma. They appear to dance his tune. Of course, we all exist with some combination of generative, preservative, and destructive qualities, but I do think it's useful, fascinating, and accurate to describe experiential reality through this lens.